Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Friday, August 12th, 2022, and today we are going to be talking about President Biden's potential re-election bid in 2024. Now, President Biden has been indicating that he does plan to run for re-election. Every time you saw people asked at the White House, whether it was the press secretary, the assistant press secretary, or really anyone that got out of the White House, they all seem to indicate that President Biden has been clear on his position about whether or not he is going to run. Now, people don't think that President Biden is going to run for a variety of reasons. Not everyone, but there's definitely a significant portion of this nation that wonders if he's just going to be a single-term president. Now, President Biden already serves as the oldest president in United States history. If he was to be reelected, he would be 82 years old. Now, there are members of Congress older than Biden, some that have served through their 90s, but that doesn't mean that's what the American voter wants, and that also means that's not necessarily what the Democratic Party might want. President Biden has been making a number of decisions recently that have benefited the Democratic Party in terms of successes in Congress, executive orders, and just action on the overall national level in terms of gas prices, inflation, and the press conferences that he is having in order to disseminate information to the American public. But that doesn't mean that they are, again, fully on board. You see, President Biden definitely will get support from his constituency if he chooses to run for re-election. I don't personally doubt that. I think looking at some of the polls that might say that President Biden loses to candidates such as Pete Buttigieg or Kamala Harris or Bernie Sanders, realistically speaking, Kamala Harris would never run against President Biden in a 2024 matchup, and Hillary Clinton certainly wouldn't either. Bernie Sanders would not run against Biden again. Pete Buttigieg is in the cabinet. There's no way he runs. And other candidates that are being named, such as Gavin Newsom, or honestly, we can just take a look at the list here to see who else they're thinking of. These people just aren't going to run against President Biden. I mean, I could never imagine a reality in which Stacey Abrams decides to run for president against President Biden, or AOC, or Joe Manchin, or Amy Klobuchar. They may all have presidential aspirations in the future, but I don't think they're going to happen now. Looking at President Biden's numbers in terms of overall approval, that's where the concern, I think, really lies. The concern isn't that President Biden is too old, but I think they are more concerned that President Biden is too unelectable. Looking at the numbers between Trump and Biden in a re-election campaign for both of them, President Trump leads on average by about 3 points nationwide. To be leading amongst the nationwide poll when you were down 7 points on Election Day and lost by 5 is not a good result for the Democratic Party. Democrats were up by a widely larger amount, and that's because in 2020, President Trump wasn't viewed in the way that he is viewed today. Many people, I think, have come to the consideration of supporting President Trump again, and the 2024 numbers on the Republican side very much prove it. President Trump, in fact, saying that he has already made up his mind back in July, and it is very much expected that this decision that he has made up is a decision that he is going to run, sort of revealing that his decision here is actually on when he decides to announce. Following the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago, the Republican Party seems to really be corralling behind President Trump. Some top Republican contenders, such as Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, they have all come to the aid of President Trump and really, tried to push and grill on the FBI to really see what this raid was all about. Obviously, there are things released today that we now know about the FBI raid, which people will take in themselves. But at the end of the day, the Republican Party is on the side of President Trump, and that has been very clear since that FBI raid. A lot of these contenders were definitely considering running against him, and it doesn't seem as if right now they are inclined to do so. In addition to that, President Trump's support amongst the GOP has actually seemed to improve. Now, more Americans, according to nationwide polling numbers, more Americans do say that the FBI raid was justified rather than unjustified. I don't personally think this FBI raid is already going to, change the trajectory of the midterms. At the end of the day, voters are going to vote how they were going to vote prior to. I don't think this is an issue as important as abortion. I quite frankly don't think anyone beyond Republicans care that President Trump was raided. This is something that what we see from the FBI and what Attorney General Merrick Garland releases is going to maybe at some point negatively reflect on the Biden administration. But based off of what we have seen in the immediate aftermath in terms of nationwide polling numbers and in terms of generic ballot data and statewide data, I don't think that we are going to see some tremendous impact and bump for the GOP simply because the FBI decided to do something. Again, if someone was already voting for the GOP, they were not going to change their mind to, support the GOP even more because of this FBI raid. I think at the end of the day, what we have found is that those who were upset about the FBI raid were already voting Republican. And I think that holds to be true in terms of those who are the most outspoken about it. But what we have found, and I've said that so many times now, President Trump has now gotten the strongest showing of support for the GOP nomination after the FBI raid. Again, I think those who are most enraged about this are Republicans, but it actually seems to help President Trump amongst his own group. These 2024 voters are considering who they are going to support for President of the United States, and right now, they seem to be inclined to go towards President Trump. It isn't just the national numbers, but also, again, the nationwide Republican nomination numbers. The numbers weren't as good before, I will say. Looking at the polls from the past few months, Trump has been leading in some low cases of 9 nationwide, but this showing from the Morning Consult is the highest we have seen for President Trump since a poll all the way back April 20th through 21st, Trump plus 45. And that was a Harvard-Harris poll, which has now been updated to show a Trump plus 33 lead. But this 38-point lead, I would say, is pretty significant because it shows that there is a level of support, higher than what might have been indicated back in July or June. Politico Morning Consult just 3 weeks ago had Trump only ahead by 30. Ron DeSantis' numbers have decreased. Mike Pence's numbers have decreased. Donald Trump's numbers, on the other hand, have risen. And they have risen for a reason. Because voters here are enraged. Republican voters, in specific, are unhappy with it. So President Trump is assured to be this Republican nominee, and we spent so much time talking about Trump when this video is about President Biden. But Republicans already have their nominee. That's important for why Biden very well could run again in 2024. Because voters are going to raise this issue of age and health, as they did with Hillary Clinton, as they did with Donald Trump, and as they did with Joe Biden in the last election. But Republicans would be in a much better position on that front if they had a candidate that wasn't Donald Trump. Donald Trump is more than likely going to be the 2024 nominee, and I think that it's something that we really need to completely understand and comprehend at this point. We are in for a rematch, and that is the likeliest outcome at this point in time. President Biden also, I would say, clears the field even just by declaring an intent to run. None of these candidates have formed exploratory committees. We should be expecting that around this period of time. Exploratory committees were announced for Elizabeth Warren at the end of 2018, early 2019, and it was a good way to sort of show that she was intending to run for the presidency at that point in time. We aren't at December 31st, 2022 just yet, but the exploratory committees and the considerations for announcing should have already happened. We should already have a general idea of who would like to run, but the thing is, Democrats are not going to run against an incumbent. Republicans, on the other hand, might be considering running against President Trump. But for President Biden here, if he decides to run, I can guarantee you he does not lose this nomination, and no major contenders, if they ever want a political future ahead of them, will run against him. Because you don't challenge an incumbent this way unless you want to lose the November election. There's a reason also, too, why there are many re-elected presidents and so few presidents who lose re-election. I mean, what you had found was that Bill Clinton was elected twice, George W. Bush was elected twice, Barack Obama was elected twice, and Donald Trump was the first president to lose re-election since George H.W. Bush in 1992. Looking at the numbers before that, it was Jimmy Carter, and then you go before then, you start to find that, yes, they did exist, but what I will say is that I think that, generally speaking, incumbents do win re-election. And when you have a unified party versus a fractured party, it helps in every single case because you don't have people on your side tearing you down before the Republicans have the chance to. In 2016, when Democrats grilled Hillary Clinton on the issue of her emails and national security and Benghazi, it only gave ammunition and added fuel to the fire for the GOP. I hate to be the one to say this, but had no one ran against Hillary Clinton in 2016, she probably would have gotten those necessary votes to win the presidency because of how close it was. But that's unrealistic to expect someone to run entirely unopposed. It's also not to say that she, was entitled to the nomination by any point, but I think that in many cases, if someone was to run unopposed, which is very unrealistic to think about, but if they were to, and it's more so an indicator or a better thing to happen in congressional elections, but if it was to happen on the presidential level, I think that you would start to see better results for that said uncontested candidate. When President Trump decides that he's going to run, when he announces his bid for the presidency, and other Republicans consider doing so and maybe even end up doing so, they are going to be fighting against each other. It's not going to be, you can consider voting for me even though President Trump is right there. They are going to give Republicans reasons why not to vote for him. And while he went through that in 2016, both parties were absolutely fractured. You had the Never Trumpers, you had the Never Hillarys, you had the groups together that were against each other, but still also against their own nominees. That might not happen if President Biden decides to run. But Democrats also aren't super thrilled. We will see what happens these November midterm elections. We will see if President Biden's approval rating is a huge indicator of what is going to happen in the midterm elections. Because if the Democrats are blown out in an epic proportion like 2010, like 2014, the argument that the Democratic Party should field somebody else increases tenfold. And it's not to say that that would be enough to oust President Biden. I still don't think that even with an abysmal, cataclysmic midterm election, I still don't think President Biden would lose his nomination if he truly decided to run and actively campaigned for it. But let's say the midterms go awry, well then President Biden and these conversations about whether or not he should be running are going to circulate. When Barack Obama, this is not new to candidates by the way, but when Barack Obama lost the midterms in 2010 when the Democrats were blown out to a very heavy level, there was a consideration about removing him in 2012 and instating Hillary Clinton. Now, she had said, absolutely, there is no way that I run against my own president as Secretary of State. There's no chance that I'm running against Obama again. But some Democrats did float it, the same way that Democrats are floating whether or not Biden decides to run in 2024. I think our assumption from here on out, based off of what President Biden has told us, is that he does decide to run. It is very hard to beat an incumbent, and the Democrats will not give up this opportunity if they know what's best for them. Because if he decides not to run, they get a less electable Democrat. And that's not to say Biden is the most electable person for 2024. I think if the election was held today, he loses the 2024 election, or I guess that would be the 2022 presidential election. But if 2024 was to be today, based off the numbers that we have, Democrats are doomed. They're not going to win. If that Senate map is held today, they get blown out in the U.S. Senate. They are fortunate enough to have a House and Senate map that is more conducive to a victory than what the Senate map might look like in 2024 for the, or not might, will look like for the Democratic Party. But again, numbers can change before that. But, President Biden, I think, if he decides not to run, he will be replaced by someone like Vice President Kamala Harris. I think if President Biden decides not to run, Kamala Harris might face one or two primary opponents. But for the sake of the Democratic primary, she is going to be treated as the incumbent, and that's going to help her. That's going to push her across the finish line. With Pete Buttigieg in this position, where he might also run too, I don't think he challenges Harris. I don't think any of these nominees or potential nominees decide to challenge Harris either. President Biden and Kamala Harris are sort of like two peas in a pod when it comes down to this guise of an incumbency. Not guise, but just the way that they are viewed by Democrats. Regardless, if either one of them decides to run, chances are the other isn't running, and they will likely easily win that nomination. But Kamala Harris is probably the less electable Democrat. As much as that, is interesting to say, considering that President Biden is down 3 points nationwide when he won the last election by being up 7 points nationwide, a 10-point swing across the country, he still serves as one of the most electable Democrats that could run. I think there are maybe some out there that could really surprise us. Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. Those are Democrats I would look to and say, I think they're more electable than Biden. But right now, Democrats don't have much of an option, and those two are focused on their re-election bids. I doubt they've thought about the presidency, or if they have, they haven't certainly thought about it for 2024. But President Biden at this point in time, I think, is the Democratic Party's best chance at defeating, especially a candidate like President Trump. Voters hate return candidates. You can ask any Senate, House nominees. Sometimes it works in extremely competitive races, and the presidential election will be very competitive. But to the extent that this has been done on the presidential level, it has only been done once, and it hasn't been done easily. We have seen considerations for return candidates, Romney in 2016, McCain in 2012, Clinton in 2020, but that doesn't happen. Because both parties know if you nominate someone who lost the last presidential election, made it to November, and lost, voters will likely reject them again. I don't know if that's going to be true with Biden's approval rating right now, or based off the national numbers that we have, but if Donald Trump wins that nomination, and Joe Biden's approval rating rebounds to anything in the positive, or really only being down about 5 points the way Obama was in 2012, President Biden might do much better than he is doing today. I think that would actually be a very close and competitive state or race to watch, and I think the Democratic Party really could end up winning with Biden in 2024 if Trump is the nominee again. It seems like a long shot that we would see a repeat time of 2020, but I can guarantee you there is a reason why Trump is fundraising. There is a reason why Biden is declaring his intent to run, because both parties know that we are more than likely going to end up in a rematch of 2020, but the Democratic Party honestly would like that, and realistically speaking, it is the best choice for the Democrats to even have Trump as the nominee, and I know that's what they said in 2016, but looking at the other options, the Republicans have such a strong bench, such a strong field to choose from, and if they go with Donald Trump, they're going with one of their weaker nominees who has already proven that he can lose nationwide. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today. Sorry, tomorrow.